And we are an advocacy and educational group concerned with the health effects of 5G and EMFs in Vermont. We've convened this public meeting to address statewide concerns about 5G and its associated increase in frequency as well as cell towers. Bill 513 is titled An Act Relating to Broadband Deployment Throughout Vermont. 5G is also known as Enhanced Mobile Broadband. 5G is part of broadband. The agenda is very simple for today. We're going to have expert statements, a statement by Annette Smith of Vermonters for a Clean Environment, statements by each of the four of us who are EMF Safety For Vermont, and scheduled public statements as well. Several of you in this room have signed up to speak, so you will have that opportunity. And then if there is time, we'll open it up to other public statements as well. To begin, Annette Smith is the founder and executive director of Vermonters for a Clean Environment, which for 20 years has been assisting Vermonters with having a voice in their communities and holding corporations accountable. Please welcome Annette Smith.
Thank you, and I appreciate that there's so much interest in this topic. I'm going to provide sort of a foundation of where we are nationally and in Vermont regarding what we know about the deployment of 5G. Many of you, I'm sure, have heard the line that it's not coming to rural areas, it's only coming to urban areas. I had a legislator tell me that just now in the cafeteria. In November of 2017, Governor Scott opted in to Vermont to the federal First Step program that puts AT&T in charge of emergency responder network. 22 new towers are planned, and that's the red in here, leading to deployment of 5G. It could have been done through the state and not turned over to industry, but at the Regional Planning Commission I attended where AT&T was present, I asked when they were presenting about a new tower in Benson, does this have anything to do with the deployment of 5G? And he said, ultimately, yes. Now, the other thing that we hear is that this may help rural broadband. So we have a statement from Michigan Senator Patrick Colbert, who is an expert in EMF technology, and he's a techie, and I'll play it, and it's short.
We dispel that right off the gate. Number one, a lot of people apparently have been told that this is something that's going to help out with rural broadband, and I think one of the testimony, to Senator Hume's credit, he identified that this is not going to help with rural broadband deployment at all.
In February 2019 of this year, at a congressional hearing, Connecticut Senator Blumenthal asked the industry representatives about the money that's been spent by the industry to study the health effects of 5G. In April of 2019, also, the New Hampshire legislature has passed a bill out of the House Science, Technology, and Energy Committee and the full House in New Hampshire, creating a committee to look into the health issues surrounding 5G. On Tuesday, the Senate Health and Human Services Committee took more testimony on this. So New Hampshire's legislature is actually listening. They're concerned. They're talking about setting up a summer study committee. And all these pieces of the puzzle, turns out, are being put in place without any public process. No notification will be required, no changes to rules. It's already, it's coming. So our citizen legislature has the responsibility to protect the health and safety of Vermonters, and we ask them to prove 5G is safe first before it is installed, apply the precautionary principle, and our job is to educate and inform.
First of all, we're not an anti-tech group at all. We're just a tech safety group. We want tech that's safe. And a few years ago, I was very, very pro Wi-Fi. And I went to a town in Nova Scotia where the whole town was Wi-Fi. And I thought, what a great thing. It's like equalizing, information for everyone. And I just thought that should be the standard across the country. And In our house, I have 2 teenage boys, and when we had Wi-Fi put into our house, it was great. You know, everybody could use their computers, they could watch movies, do their homework, and it was great. But about 1.5 years ago, I started noticing some strange symptoms, and I found that it was very hard to sleep through the night. I was having like a brain fog in the evening, just short-term memory loss, and then worse of all, I would wake up in the middle of the night and have vertigo, and the room would just be spinning. And you know, I didn't really know what the reason was, but I did a little research, and I found out about smart meters and the effect that had on some people. And luckily, through the work that Annette Smith did with her group, Vermont has the ability to opt out of the smart meter. So that was my first step. I got rid of the smart meter.
Thank you, Annette.
Yes. And I should say that GMP, they were totally happy to do that service. They were really great. And but then I had a Wi-Fi router in my room. I had my devices all around, and I got rid of all that stuff, and it kind of changed my life. I was able to sleep through the night. I could think more clearly, and that was all with 4G. So with 4G, we have the option to at least make a safe space in our house, and you know, and live without so much electro smog if you're out in the country like we are. But with 5G, I just want to talk a little bit about the difference of what 5G is. So we're all on the same page. 5G is a shorter wave. You know, I'm not a scientist, but this is just from what I understand. 5G is a shorter wave that won't travel as far. So it won't go through trees, won't go through leaves, it won't go through walls. So that means we need more cells. And so 5G requires 3 things. It needs the massive MIMO towers, which in the past we might have had a tower that had 20 cells on it. Now one of these towers are monstrous. They can have up to 200 cells on them. So you have 2 things there. You have the aesthetic. You know, in the state where we don't allow billboards, we allow these monstrous things look like they're out of a science fiction movie. And what does that do for tourism, right? That's what feeds our state. So 5G requires those massive MIMO towers. The other thing it requires is small cell technology. And they say small cell, but it really is, what it means is, it's like taking a giant cell tower, splitting it up, and putting it in our community. So you might have a cell outside your window, you might have a cell over your bus stop where you're waiting for an hour in the morning, you might have it in a park where people hang out all day. Unlike a cell tower, you can't look at it and say, oh, I better stay away from that giant cell tower, because it's in your community. It could be outside your window. And the third thing that 5G, the way it's different, is that it's a different sort of wave. It's a beam-forming wave. And that means, like with 4G, it's more like you drop a pebble in the water and the waves go out kind of indiscriminately. But with 5G, it's a type of wave that goes directly to your phone. It will like find the shortest route. And that means that we're going to have a lot of like these beams of whatever they are to everybody's phone. So if you're if you're at all electronically sensitive like I am, you're walking through the downtown, everybody's on their phone. You're like walking through these high-powered beams all day long. And you know, even and the other thing is, you're talking about getting ready for 5G. So that means putting these small cells into our community before we have 5G. So that means we have 4G, which is meant to transfer for miles on these poles in your neighborhood, powerful ways. Perhaps it's even more dangerous than having 5G in your community if you have all these cells with 4G going through it. So, in short, there's a better way. There's fiber optic cable. It's the way to go. It's safer. It's faster. And it's right.
More reliable.
It's more reliable.
I'm Beverly Stone, and I'm an environmental and health advocate who loves this planet and all of its amazing beauty. And while I have a science background, which is actually a BS in chemistry, I'm new to the science behind man-made radiation. Many species have internal GPS systems that are a function of these nanoparticles of magnetite, which is an iron-based particle. And the man-made radiation makes their GPS systems go haywire. This may be another factor behind what everyone's heard about with the colony collapse disorder, in which perfectly healthy bees abandon their hives. Man-made radiation disrupts normal cellular and biological function, and it results in abnormal behavior and development and lower reproduction rates and higher mortality rates. Like smoking, exposure to man-made radiation may not result in immediate health decline, but over time, cumulative exposure can and does have an impact. Out of the 919 research studies carried out on birds, plants, bees, and other animals and humans, 593 of them showed impacts from man-made radiation. So the elephant in the room is getting bigger with 5G, and this is not just because of the high frequencies, but also because of the large increase in the number of cell towers that would be placed every 2 to 10 buildings or houses. There's also concern of contamination and or plant damage, both of which can lead to a reduced or unhealthy food supply for all living things. As an aside, it also saddens me that 5G, for 5G to be deployed, there will be a lot of trees cut down in our beautiful Vermont.
I'm Ishana Artra. I live in Brattleboro, Vermont. I've been a resident of Vermont for 20 years, and I have a PhD in psychology, and I am an EMF testing professional. I'm not anti-tech. I'm pro-health and safety. I'm going to cut to the chase. Evidence-based studies worldwide have clearly established harmful effects of human exposure to cell towers, cell phones, and other pulsed radio frequency radiation devices, which I will describe in this presentation. I'm here today to say in no uncertain terms that it has become necessary for Vermont legislators to stop relying on telecom lobbyists and the FCC. Legislators need accurate information to safeguard the health and safety of Vermonters. FCC guidelines are based on a 1996, that's 23 years old, study of how much a cell phone heated the head of one mannequin. They applied Newtonian physics, where a mechanical force acts on a physical object. This is problematic, as those being exposed, us, to radio frequency radiation are fetuses, children, adults, plants, and wildlife, made of cells and living tissue, not plastic. Living systems, including the human body, are bioelectrical. Our cells and tissues respond to electromagnetic fields of photons, visible and non-visible light. Photons are the particles of light. And energy. Radio waves, such as those transmitted by cell towers, cell phones, and Wi-Fi routers, are electromagnetic fields that carry pulsating photons as energy encoded with data. The term frequency refers to the number of waves per second passing a given point. Depending on the length of each wave, it may be visible to the human eye. You can see the waves changing as you go up the spectrum. Radio frequency radiation is the transfer of energy by these radio waves. It is referred to as RF radiation and is emitted from cell towers, cell phones, and other wireless devices. 5G uses a cocktail of 3 types of radiation. Radio waves have photons with low energies. Microwave photons have a little more energy, and millimeter waves have even more energy. This is the coverage capacity up to 4G, and over here, the capacity of 5G. We're entering into a whole new part of the spectrum. 5G adds extremely high frequencies, whereas 4G goes up to 6 gigahertz, 5G exposes biological life to pulsed signals in the 30 gigahertz to 300 gigahertz range. These higher frequencies, which include millimeter waves, have never been previously released into public areas. They have never been released into public areas. Why does this matter? Well, it turns out that our skin's sweat ducts intensely absorb the higher frequency waves, and they do so at a much higher absorption level than any other part of our skin. The skin and eyes act like receptors, and they draw in the 5G waves. Now, this is even more alarming as the 5G build-out adds a cell tower every 2 to 10 houses or buildings. The known impact of exposure to radio frequency radiation and serious concerns about 5G has prompted leaders in states like California, our neighbors New Hampshire and Massachusetts, and Oregon and others, and countries such as Italy, Belgium, Israel, Switzerland, and the Netherlands to place a moratorium on the 5G rollout. So here's what the medical people say in about 1,500 pages of abstracts. Over 2,000 international evidence-based studies, 2,000, correlate human suffering with pulsed radio wave radiation technology, such as cell towers, routers, cell phones, tablets, and other wireless devices. We know that RF radiation is carcinogenic, harmful at even low and short exposures, and it impacts our children and our fetuses more rapidly than it impacts adults. But no one is immune. We know that 8 areas of harm for pulsed radiation with at least 100 biological effects exist. They are fertility, neurological and neuropsychiatric impacts, mutations, programmed cell death, free radical damage, hormonal effects, excessive intracellular calcium, and cancer. We also know how this damage can occur. DNA damage, voltage-gated calcium channels, blood-brain barrier opening, melatonin hormone reduction, and microbiome disruption. Some of the public statements that you're going to hear today will describe what it's like to live with these effects of hypersensitivity. Just a few of the many symptoms of overexposure to radio frequency radiation include depression, cancer, anxiety, headaches, muscle pain, attention deficits, infertility, loss of bone density, arthritis, insomnia, dizziness, tinnitus, skin tingling, loss of appetite, and nausea, just to name a few. At least 2,000 more evidence-based studies have been published since the Navy's publication. 2,000 more evidence-based studies have been published since the Navy's publication. Now, these studies have confirmed that pulsed radiofrequency radiation has biological effects. The damage spans our endocrine, cardiovascular, and nervous systems. These peer-reviewed, published papers are compiled in the Bio-Initiative report, which everyone here can access, and I encourage you to do so at bioinitiative.org, bioinitiative.org. It's telling that insurance companies refuse to insure the wireless industry. In terms of cancer, recent findings, such as the $30 million 2018 United States National Toxicology Program study, have corroborated the findings of all well-designed heart and brain cancer studies of people with 10 or more years of exposure to cellular radiation from cell towers and cell phones. They all agree RF radiation causes cancer. But what's the response to all of this evidence? Scientists are urging the World Health Organization to update its classification of radiofrequencies from a group 2B carcinogen to a class 1 carcinogen, making radio frequencies and 5G comparable to arsenic and asbestos. World Health Organization's former chief of the Research Unit of Epidemiology for Cancer Prevention, Annie Sasko, MD, asserts, enough is enough. How many more deaths would be needed before serious action is taken? Evidence just continues to accumulate. And in the words of the designer of the National Toxicology Program study, Ronald Melnick, quote, "What should happen now is the FDA should be immediately working on developing a quantitative risk assessment from this data, and in the meantime, the FDA, FCC, and other agencies should promote precautionary measures for the population, especially for children." This movement for public health and safety is also galvanized by 247 scientists from 42 nations who have signed the 5G appeal, urgently calling upon the United Nations and its sub-organizations and all UN member states for a moratorium on 5G. It has become necessary for our legislators to stop relying on telecom lobbyists and the FCC for the information legislators need to safeguard the health and safety of Vermonters. Vermonters deserve better than more cell towers placed closer to their bodies.
Thank you, and my name is Derek Jordan. I'm proud to be a member of EMF Safety for Vermont with these wonderful people. And thank you so much for coming today. So, interestingly enough, I have type 2 diabetes, and I'd heard that wireless and this technology could cause diabetes in people, is one of the symptoms. But I had no diabetes in my family. I was not at risk for diabetes. I had a good lifestyle, diet, exercise, all that stuff. But, so I thought, okay, I don't know what's going on. I went back and checked back on my blood tests, right? Because I wanted to see if there might be a correlation. And I found out that at the time we got wireless in my house a few years ago, is when my blood sugar rose very fast and very suddenly within 6 months to a very high level, to where I had to start taking insulin. Okay, good news is that I'm doing really well. Don't worry, my blood sugar is way down now from all this stuff, working with good people. But while we can't make, it's not proof, right, of what happened to me, certainly is an interesting coincidence. So it's something that I was concerned about. We do not accept the rules made by the FCC that do not allow public consent and participation in the siting of 5G cell towers. We feel that this is a clear violation of free speech, and they do not have the right to tell us what we can or cannot say, or how we can or cannot participate in the issues around our health. It's undemocratic. It's undemocratic for the telecom industry to have free rein in siting these cell towers in our front yards, sometimes, without even asking our permission, especially for technology that has been proven in thousands of peer-reviewed studies to be biologically harmful. That is unacceptable. Now, I want to just say something. We are lucky to have our neighboring state, New Hampshire, is actually ahead of Vermont on this issue. They passed a bill in the New Hampshire House committee, and it's gone and it's passed in the House floor. It's now going to the Senate. And let me just give you a couple of quotes from that bill, which I think are great. Quote, "Why have thousands of peer-reviewed studies, including the recently published U.S. Toxicology Program, 16-year, $30 million study that are showing a wide range of statistically significant DNA damage, brain and heart tumors, infertility, and so many other ailments. Why are they being ignored by the Federal Communications Commission? Good question, right? Second quote, why have more than 200 of the world's leading scientists signed an appeal to the World Health Organization and the United Nations to protect public health from wireless radiation, and nothing has been done? Well, I think we all know the answer. Money. The industry stands to make trillions of dollars on the deployment of 5G. And I have to remind you, deployment is a military term.
Yeah,
It's a military
that's
term.
what I was saying.
There is definitely military issues around this wave technology. In fact, military have used it for crowd dispersal. I really hope that we can keep Vermont beautiful and a healthy place to live and to raise our children.